Good day, amigos! It's time to strap up and get ready for our mind-blowing video collection. We've compiled a list of mind-boggling facts and surprising events that have occurred to actual people just like you. This movie will take you on an emotional roller coaster, so grip on tight and be ready to be impressed, appalled, and perhaps even afraid. Are you prepared? Let's get started. What happened after you married a Bridezilla, Viewers Edition. I was lucky enough to have a very easygoing wedding myself, and there was no drama coming from the bride or myself, but with how common it is for brides to feel so entitled about their special day and the very negative reputation this has, I'm not surprised that we're seeing a rise in couples opting to elope. The day is meant to be a fun celebration of love, and these people that make it all about themselves are just missing the point. Let's hear what experiences the viewers have had with this. Story 1. My ex-fiancé was the one who wanted a big wedding and was a groomzilla. I wanted to elope. His mother was also controlling, so the two did most of the planning behind my back. She even took him to a venue without me because she wanted a venue that was closer of a drive for her. I had no say who was my wedding guest. His mother asked him if we were going to have a lot of black people there. I'm mixed with black and white. Forced him to tell me to straighten my hair for our engagement photo because it would look neater. He forced me to fix my toxic family so we have this perfect family image because, God forbid, that I show reality. My family drama got worse and I begged him to just elope. I asked him what was more important, a wedding party or having me as his wife. Was it worth watching me go through this much pain to fix my family? He said that the wedding was more important. He started to control my bridesmaids. He wouldn't allow me to thrift my wedding dress because he wanted me in a huge ball gown, and he in a James Bond tux. We were getting married on an apple orchard. He was so obsessed with having a perfect wedding. Thankfully, the talk of kids was what woke me up that this is the guy who would father my children. When I canceled the wedding, his mom and him spread awful rumors about me. He also spat on me and threw water at me because I refused to give him a baby after the wedding and said I lost my value. A few months later, his sister copied our wedding and honeymoon and went to the same wedding dress shop I got my dress and got the same bridesmaids' dresses. Then his dad got married, and now his mom is marrying a man she only dated for 4 months. It was a hard choice to cancel the wedding, but I am so happy I am not a part of that family. Story 2. I understand some people really don't want a big celebration at all, but a very small, short, and simple one. But if your parents or your fiancé's parents want a big one, please try to understand why. Of course, the parents of the couple may feel a very, very special way about this celebration, very similarly to how couples themselves may feel a very special way about it. If they're willing to pay for the guests they want to invite, and if they're willing to figure out together with you which traditions or bits you will enjoy and in what way, then please hear them out. I'm not a parent, but if my kid's married, I would want to have at least a few hours full of fun celebratory stuff to do. I'd like to invite a few people who were close friends to our family when said child was small, even if we sort of fell out and they're not close with my child anymore. Just people who I know would be joyous alongside me and my kid and their spouse. I think this can't be that bad. Do people really hate big celebrations this much? Why? Is it not possible to compromise? Is there no way you can enjoy a bigger celebration? If the parents pay for the stuff they want, that increases the bill and compromise to make it fun for everyone, not just themselves. I'm sure some people have their reasons, and it truly would make their wedding experience a lot worse for them, but I just wonder how many really are like that. I would be like that. As I mentioned, our wedding was pretty easygoing, but it wasn't super small. We had about 130 guests, and there were definitely people there that we invited just for the sake of our parents. It is nice to see so many people who want to celebrate with you, but there's also a threshold, for me at least, where I don't want to have to worry about showing face to the extended guests and all the extra little things that stack up when expanding the guest list. Even if the costs are covered, I feel that there's a mental burden that's put on the bride and groom the larger the party is. I would not suggest trying to use the excuse of covering costs as a way to control the way the wedding is celebrated. In my opinion, people don't like to be beholden to people with money. Story 3. Honestly, I never thought about having a wedding for myself. My mom did all the planning for me. No one was a bridezilla. We didn't even get to pick out the song for our first song. All we cared about was being married to each other. These bridezilla stories are so insane that I can't even imagine how even the guests were able to get through any of the BS once the proposal was announced, because there's no way that I would put up with any of this BS, no matter how long we've been friends. We got both sides of the wedding though, so it's like first the groom side wedding, and most are the groom side relatives and friends, and of course the VIP will be the bride's and groom's closest family members, and vice versa. I only chose our own songs, and the rest of our family put together for us, and we all had a memorable time with zero drama. Hearing all these stories, dang, I hate it. I can understand being overwhelmed. My fiance and I bumped heads a bit, but talked it out and came to a conclusion. These people are just terrible. I'm mainly overwhelmed by my in-laws because they're very religious, but I want a black dress and have already bought one. I didn't take anyone with me because I don't want any terrible comments, and I'm glad I didn't because when I told them, they yelled, "Why?" It's irritating, but their marriage and my mom's wedding wasn't even traditional either. Story 4. I'm a girly girl who loves dresses, makeup, etc., but I was the most low-key non-bridezilla ever. I wanted the cheapest, fastest, go-about-your-day-people wedding ever. Because for me, I had no desire to be princess for the day, have that look-at-me moment, etc. It wasn't about that for me. I just wanted a quick ceremony that bound my life to my husband's forevermore. We were being joined. That was the entire point. It was not show business for me. I didn't need a stage or to set a scene for this. I wanted something quick and real. No lights, camera action, just him and I loving each other. Immediate family only. It took an hour and we were done. No reception, no fancy anything, just a tiny country church and the people who actually loved us watching. I made my own bouquet. We pinned a rose on him. We lit a plain candle. And for the past 25 plus years, we've been happy and in love. My sister-in-law insisted on an expensive wedding. Everything had to be perfect and expensive catering, etc. She was divorced within a year after her parents went into debt to pay for her princess for a day wedding. The divorce was her doing. It almost makes me wonder when I hear these stories if the price and drama of the wedding corresponds with how short a time the marriage lasts. Story 5. I'm not sure if it counts, but I had a friend who had 2 weddings to the same guy within a year apart from each other. She got proposed to during COVID, and like most people, I assumed they were going to wait until the pandemic was over to have a wedding. They never talked about it the rest of the year. A week before their wedding date, they asked me if I'm coming to it. I say, "What are you talking about? You haven't talked about it for like a year. I'm going on vacation that week." The bride was mad at me because I was going to be gone for her special day. A good portion of her family was out of the country, and they ended up having their wedding in their house. The next summer, she had a reception so that someone for a family that couldn't make it to the first one could attend, and there was less people at that one, complete with a brand new dress that she had ripped an hour before. I hear now they're arguing about having kids, and one is a workaholic. I'm just waiting for the drama to unfold. Story 6. Well, lo and behold, mother-in-law came to a wedding together with father-in-law. She was standing on the side during the whole wedding, while my father-in-law, a man I greatly respect, told us to not pay attention to the pouting kid while pointing at her. Later, during the wedding, I went to take a pee when I heard father-in-law screaming at mother-in-law at full force and telling her that he's going to beat the crap out of her if she tries to mess up his only daughter's wedding. Wife has 2 brothers. I've known father-in-law for 5 years, and this was super out of character for him. Shows you how much mother-in-law sucks. When I later told my wife that, she couldn't believe it. She said her dad was strict, sure, but threats like that? Well, we called him and he came for a talk. Turns out mother-in-law was going to dump a glass of wine on both me and my wife to embarrass us. Mother-in-law is crazy beyond belief, and I told my wife that under no circumstances is my kid going to be around her. Father-in-law, yes, but not her. Story 7. India is a huge country with hundreds of cultures and people from different social levels. Dowry is blatantly asked for in some rudimentary areas, like up in Bihar, especially in, for the lack of a better term, lower middle class. The middle class part of the country is divided. Some are absolutely 100% against it. Like, they take offense if someone even asks them for a dowry, and the other takes gifts that the bride's family gives for bride's happiness. The upper middle, I don't know much, but as far as I've seen, the kids get freedom to plan how they want, what they want. Otherwise, the whole gift goes here also, just on a much larger scale. But most people that I meet, everyone decent has outgrown the idea of a dowry. But yes, it is still a common practice in the lower middle class section of society. I always viewed a dowry as a weird tradition of insurance or something of the like. Like from the olden days when women had way less freedom to be their own person and had to be defined by who their husband was. So, in order to secure a husband and ensure the marriage stayed together, the parents of the bride had to sweeten the deal by adding in all these fancy linens and treasures, which, by modern day standards, in the US at least, this concept would cheapen the bond that's meant to be celebrated. You shouldn't marry someone for the perks that they offer. You should marry them because you like them at face value. Story 8. Don't give up on it too soon. I nearly did after a couple of girlfriends went to the dark side and tried to see how much trouble they could cause. I made friends with a girl who was into all the good stuff. Books, history, music, science, outdoorsy stuff, music and books. One day we came back from a music practice in the snow. She looked so cute in her fluffy hat and coat. Then a snowflake landed on her nose. I went to blow it away, just as she turned her face up to see what I was doing. We've been married 38 years this coming May. Despite me being incredibly ill with seriously wonky brain things, she's loved me unconditionally, kicked my butt when it needed to be kicked, and made me into the kind man I wanted to be. Story 9. This is not the first time I've heard this story, but all I can say is, every time I hear it, I believe the OP definitely dodged a bullet. The fact the OP's now ex is so blinded by the fog that he'll basically do anything and everything for his family, like he didn't do the proposal because he loved the OP. He only did it because his family wanted him to, and him to give up after doing what his family told him, and for them to go out of hand with trying to control everything, claiming the wedding's all about them. I would have walked out the minute that crap started happening. But I love the OP is realization of why she left him originally, because this probably was the exact issue that she faced, even as his girlfriend. Undercover cops, what are your best "are you freaking kidding me" moments? Viewers edition. Yeah, criminals aren't generally known for being the sharpest people, and sometimes when they think that they're being slick or discreet, they're actually making complete fools of themselves. And sometimes the police aren't too much brighter themselves. Seems a lot of our viewers had first-hand experience with the incredulous moments of crime and our flawed system of law and order. Let's hear about some of these encounters, shall we? Story 1. I was driving back home down a back road. The road had been recently paved over. Because of this, the road is completely black with no striped line center divider and no reflectors. There is no street lighting, and there are very few homes that are mostly further back in the property, so their front porch lighting does not reach the road. It is a cloudy night, so the only thing lighting the road are my headlights. I can barely tell where the road ends and the off-road begins, to the point that I'm mostly guessing. From a distance, I see a car turn into the road coming my direction. The car has high beams on, and only one headlight is working. I'm a blinded guy, so as we pass each other on the road, my eyesight recovers. I look at my rear view, cursing at the car under my breath, and then I see it take a U-turn. My mind was telling me that this is probably bad news. I can see that the vehicle is actually getting closer, but by that time, I had already been slowing down, stopped at the stoplight, and reached the main road. I quickly look both ways. All clear, no traffic. So I do a heavy acceleration. The main road is 55 miles per hour, compared to the back road's 30 miles per hour, so I knew I was okay to accelerate without worrying about going over the limit. The car followed me without stopping, a rolling stop. Tires never completely stopped rotating at the stop sign. Then the lights come on. The cop, of course, goes through the usual license and registration, where you headed spiel, and a second patrol unit pulls up behind. This is standard precautionary practice for all traffic stops in the middle of the night where I'm from. They instruct me to step out of the car. Obviously, this means they're suspicious that I may be under the influence. I comply. And of course, I'm a klutz and just happened to stumble on a small ditch hidden by the grass. They ask if I'd been drinking. I tell them I don't drink, smoke, or do any drugs. The cop then pulls out his flashlight to shine it at my face, and I instinctively close my eyes. He asked why I was driving in the middle of the road. I think he was attempting to get me to acknowledge wrongdoing, as well as get me comfortable to open my eyes while talking. Keeping my eyes closed, I responded. I told him the above-mentioned description of the road conditions. I also told him I had astigmatism. The high beam from his vehicle rendered me blind as we passed. I couldn't see his car or the road for a few seconds and didn't have full vision until 10 seconds had passed. He then asked me why I sped at the intersection. Again, a leading question wanting me to admit to speeding. I corrected him. I told him not to speed. I accelerated to the speed limit of the main road as fast as I was able to. He then asked why I did that. So I asked him what he would have done if a vehicle with a single working headlight suddenly did a U-turn to tail him in the middle of the night. He looks at his patrol car, just realizing the headlight. He then tells me that he will be issuing a warning for driving. I ask if his buddies will be issuing him a warning for the headlight. He isn't above the law and is responsible for checking that the patrol unit is road safe prior to operating it. He sheepishly looks at the ground. Then he looks back at me and tells me to have a safe ride home as he hands me back my registration papers. No ticket, no warning. Story 2. Not a cop, but 20 years ago when I was 14, there was a cop that hated kids, and hated kids who rode bicycles even more, and so loved to harass kids. He would blatantly go to the same spot and fall asleep for several hours while on the job. Well, one day I had enough of him harassing me when I would ride past to get to dirt jumps. So the really stupid fact is he would park right at the top of the hill and kind of hidden going up, but if you knew the spot, you could potentially see the shadow. So I fake crashed my bike, basically on purpose, hit the front of his police car and fell over on my own, not going fast at all to make it seem like he hit me. Well, fun fact, I am double jointed, so I can dislocate my arm and put my arm in weird places while still being able to use it normally, even dislocated, so I got up screaming my head off, with my arm hanging backwards. It scared the crap out of him so much because he thought I broke my arm on his car while he was sleeping behind the wheel. He ran out of his car freaking out, trying to figure out what to do, because turns out he was not even in the area he was supposed to be patrolling, and if he called for an ambulance, he would get fired, and he was freaking out. He was fat as heck, and it was funny seeing a 400-pound officer running around in circles like a chicken without a head. I swung my arm back into its socket and said, "Oh, it's fine. No harm, no foul." He got in his car and drove off and never returned to that area. He freaked out so much, and no one said anything about a Karen cop harassing kids in the area ever again. I still laugh about it today. Story 3. Not a cop, but I encountered such an incident live when I was still learning how to drive. My city is neighboring an affluent local council for upper-class rich people. A local council is an independent municipal unit with over 2,000 people, but not large enough to be declared a city. And by neighboring, I mean you drive near the edge of my city, take a turn, and you're in the local council. Villas everywhere, lots of tree lanes on the sides of the roads, quiet streets, lots of roundabouts. Driving speed allowed is 40 miles per hour tops. So my driving instructor regularly took the newer students there to get used to driving before tackling the busier streets of my city. One lesson, I'm entering a roundabout to turn left on about 20 miles per hour or so, and I notice a police car coming straight in front of me and stopping before entering the roundabout to let me through. Since I'm already entering the roundabout, the police car have to wait until I pass them. Before I get past the right turn, 1/4 of the roundabout, a car zooms from the right, going a lot faster than 40 miles per hour, cuts me off. My driving instructor had to emergency brake, or the other car would have crushed straight into us, and speed the roundabout right in front of the police car. The police officers took a moment to see that we are unharmed, turned the sirens on, and chased the moron. My instructor took a few moments to make sure I'm fine, and then we continued the lesson like nothing happened. I turned left, as I've originally intended, and after about 3 minutes driving, I saw the speeding car have been pulled over by the police officers who were in the process of ticketing the driver. They gave us a wave as we drove by. Story 4. Years ago at a Safeway, I always had trouble dealing with Safeway employees screwing up my order constantly because they did not know how to use a register because of lack of training. I ended up having to go to the customer service desk for the 5th time in 7 days and told the woman behind the counter that if they had proper training, this stuff would stop happening. I got banned from the store for being rude to the store manager. All I said was if the employee actually got trained, this problem would stop happening. Customer service desk had to deal with fixing orders constantly. Well, less than 2 weeks after I got banned for life, the store manager was acting like she usually did and started screaming at a customer in the parking lot. Then she punched the customer who was with his brother. His brother was a police officer who was still wearing his uniform, but was off duty, going home, but stopped to pick up a few items from the store first. He then had to call his office to come pick up the dumb witch who punched his brother, who was a police cadet, basically an officer in training. Turns out the witch was drunk off her butt and had been drinking while on the job. She got arrested for assaulting a police officer and attacking an officer in training. I heard about what happened from the police officer who arrested the witch who attacked his brother, and he told me that if I went back there, it would not be illegal because the person who banned me is the real problem. But I still never went back for over 10 years, and then stopped going there again because they still are run by complete moronic dumb butts. Story 5. About 20 years ago, I used to run a local drug trafficking ring, small stuff like marijuana, and not even in that large of a quantity. It's a fairly crime-free town in general. When walking home down an alleyway, I often take a car, speed around, and start driving down the alleyway towards me, clearly attempting to run me over. I know I can't reach the other end of the alleyway in time, so I maneuver myself below the fire escape of the building next to me. As the car gets close, I turn away and push my feet out behind me to absorb some of the force of the car, so it pushes me up into the air where I can grab the ladder and sweep my legs up as the car passes narrowly underneath. It's only as the car passes under me that I see the police light on the back shelf inside the car still unlit. I later found out as I'm getting treatment for my poor pair of sprained ankles that the cop that tried to end my life was a recent transfer from America. This was in the UK, by the way. I don't know what cop shows this nutcase had watched as a child, but as a general rule, you don't try to run over a criminal when they have no escape. What the heck? I didn't hear of the cop after that, so I'm guessing he had repercussions for his reckless actions. This one is interesting, and seemingly the first one of the bunch to be submitted by an actual criminal. Police brutality has been a hot topic in the US for quite a while, but yeah, in theory, they are meant to use non-lethal force wherever possible to subdue their criminals. But reading this story, it definitely seemed excessive to try to run down this guy in his cruiser. It's not like real life is like superhero movies where you can totally obliterate your enemies, but there's no gruesome injuries or fatal consequences because you have to keep it PG-13. This cop needs to show some restraint and be more tactical in their approach. Story 6. Another one I have. My brother and I are driving somewhere, headed home, when a car blaring music pulls up beside us, thinking he's some bad butt dude. Dancing all over the place, just getting into it. At this point, both my brother and I are laughing because he looks stupid. He sees us and thinks he's cool as crap, holds a joint out the window. Mind you, the town I live in, the cops will stop you for looking stupid at them. The guy is still going at it, dancing and holding the joint out the window, thinking he's the most hard dude there is. Now, about this time, we both notice the completely marked cop car that pulls up behind him, and my brother and I are like, yeah, dude, you are so cool, keep it up. And wouldn't you know it, the cop lights up. That was probably one of the best laughs I've had in years. A time for me, though, was when it was a motorcycle rally, and there were cops on motorcycles there, too. As I'm driving by, I forget I have both my windows down and scream, "Oh crap, Chips is here." Man, I got the dirtiest stare that day from them. They just gave me a warning and to keep traffic flowing. Story 7. We are on the other side. Friend and I were speeding. We just finished the closing shift in a supermarket, and it was 11:30 p.m. in a rural area. Didn't put anyone in danger but ourselves and the wildlife. Well, at an intersection where we both slowed down a bit to make sure there wouldn't be any traffic, he got pulled over in front of me by an unmarked police car. I slow down some more as I pass them, checking out if they want me to stop too, but they ignore me. Turns out there was some poachers in the area, hunting deer or something, and his car matched the description. After they checked his trunk and believed his explanation where he's coming from and going to, Helped that we had our store shirts on with the logo still on them. They let him go with a warning to drive a bit slower. Well, while I'm already at home waiting for him to text me what happened, he gets pulled over a second time by another unmarked cop car. Really his "you gotta be kidding me" evening. What is the greatest poop show that you've ever witnessed? Viewers Edition. Story 1. Everyone has that white trash branch of family. And I was like, oh yes, I know where this is going. Also, though, it's why I'm not having a big wedding, ever. I'm just going to court and signing papers. I ain't wasting money on wedding BS. I don't like how the Korean family didn't say what it was. Like, if I was there, I'd immediately not eat it after hearing that. It sounds like a green card story, though, to be honest. So story number 9 from the original video. Do all electronic shows go like that? I don't know why they're so intent on doing drugs when the new year was already over and we knew Y2K wasn't happening. No reason to OD anymore in fear. What makes me mad is how when the poster told everyone to meet somewhere if stuff goes down, and they laugh at me. At least they listen, but still, mom stuff, like said, is usually correct and should be listened to. Story 11 is what happens when you live in a house of traditional values and you don't listen to them. It's obvious he was taught to get married first, then have kids, but he messed up and he knows it, so he tries to fix it by getting married and fast. So of course the wedding is going to suck. Takes a year to plan a wedding if you actually have a wedding. I don't understand why people eat spicy foods and then just get shocked when their butthole blasts all over the place. Like, stop eating that food then, dude. Just stop. It's like the episode of South Park when Cartman talks about Chipotle making him poop the blood, and Kyle is like, well then stop eating it. And Cartman is like, no, it's yummy, so I'm gonna buy Billy Mays' Chipotle away instead to get the bloody poop stains out of my underwear. I tell my boyfriend this all the time too, but he never listens, so I told him to never complain to me about it again. Story 2. When I was 17, I went to a house party of a girl whose parents weren't home. It was clearly a little out of hand already, with too many people there, but as the night slowed down and I was in a bedroom with my then-girlfriend, trying to lose my V-card, we hear Hard in the Paint by Waka Flocka come on in the living room, and a big commotion. A few minutes later, the girl who lived there burst into the room, bawling her eyes out to my girlfriend and babbling about everything being ruined. Not making sense, we followed her into the living room, and everything was ruined. A gang of buttholes ended up living alone, while Waka Flocka went on a rampage and destroyed the house in a pretty quick escalation. Glass cabinets punched in, markers and food all over the walls and floor, holes in the walls, uncooked meat and leftovers from the fridge shoved down the garbage disposal. They even poured milk and cereal in people's cars who left the windows down. I remember thinking how deviously creative they got with their destruction in what had to have only taken place in maybe 5 minutes. Everyone who had gone to bed and was awoken by screaming did so to a real poop show, and we ended up cleaning this poor girl's house as much as we could until the sun came up. If a healthy high schooler could have a heart attack, I'm sure that girl would have. But let's also not forget that I was totally dong-blocked by this event. Story 3. Sort of building on what they said in Story 7, I'm a cleaner. I live in the UK, so we don't sugarcoat the name of that profession here, in an office. Most people treat us fine. They'll smile, nod, and say hi as they pass us. A few will ignore us, and generally almost everyone power walks past us when they actually see us cleaning to get out of our way. I mostly do vacuuming, so it's not really a fear of the chemicals we're using. The few times I've worked the toilets, oh boy. Nothing like in these stories, but while the male toilets are generally in good condition, there seem to be a lot of women that don't understand that their period blood can and will get under the toilet seat if they're not sitting correctly or whatever. I'm a guy, so forgive my ignorance as to exactly how women need to sit on toilets to avoid this. If that happens to you, that's fine. It's okay, but please, at the end, when you're finishing up and about to wash your hands, please just lift the toilet seat, get a few layers of toilet paper, and wipe it down. Your bodily fluids are a lot less gross to you than they are to anyone else, and it's also quicker and easier for you before that stuff dries. Plus, consider all the people who use the toilet after you who don't see that there before we cleaners get there and do our daily cleaning of those toilets. Also, for the sake of everyone's safety at the office, you should wipe down the seat. I heard their period blood can attract bears, and not the kind of bears that you can just fend off by drawing an anti-sea bear circle around you in the sand. You better also avoid cube cheese and wearing your sombrero in a goofy fashion, just to be extra careful, lest you attract a sea rhinoceros as well. Story 4. Oh, I've got a good story for you. There was the famous mystery chili incident, named so by a small child asking his mom what the mystery chili was that was leading to the front woman's bathroom. A homeless alcoholic who frequently came into our store to shoplift and drink a box of wine didn't quite make it to the bathroom. The piles of chili was only the beginning. Inside the bathroom, she had managed to crap on everything, including blowing a massive fan of crap on, over, and behind the toilet. Best part was, our porter was off that day, and no one was willing to clean it up. I walk in as they're starting to close the store down and tell the manager I'd handle it. Got out the janitor cart, a hose, and the hazmat suit, a glorified fishing suit hung in the janitor's closet, and proceeded to clean the mess. Thankfully, there was a sewage access hole in the bathroom, and I spent 10 minutes hosing the entire bathroom down. Long story short, I had the bathroom cleaned in 30 minutes, including replacing all paper products, and got to immediately take a paid hour break. Spent the rest of the day cleaning and clearing the other bathrooms, instead of being a bagger, which I liked because that meant I could smoke the entire day. Story 5. Warning, this will be absolutely disgusting. No, seriously, this is really bad, and you may not want to read on if you're sensitive. Be me, rushed to the ER for sudden bleeding at 7.5 months pregnant. I poop when I'm scared, and since there might have been something wrong with my baby, I was terrified. I started to get bubble guts as soon as they put me in a room, so I hobbled to the bathroom while waiting for the doc and released the most eldritch horror I've ever seen. I filled that poor toilet with a combination of poop and blood, and the smell was eye-watering. And, of course, when I flushed, the fetid miasma started rising. Thankfully, it stopped before spilling out onto the floor, but it was close. Wishing I would just die at this point, I called the nurse and explained very quietly that the toilet was clogged, and they should have maintenance come fix it before they put anyone else in that room. I thought they would wait till I was discharged before sending anyone up to do it, but no. In walks the maintenance man a few minutes later. I will be forever haunted by the glare he gave me on his way out. P.S. The bleeding stopped very shortly after, and the baby was fine. My pride, however, never recovered. This reminds me of the time I was living in an apartment, and maintenance was scheduled to come check the smoke detector at some point in the day. But of course, the window of time that they gave was like 4 hours wide, so they could arrive anytime between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. I had just gotten up and was getting ready for the day, as it was a tad before 9 a.m. I had to take my morning poo and thought to myself, what are the chances that they'll come exactly at 9? I've probably got time to use the bathroom before they get here. So I plopped down on the toilet and released the hounds. And wouldn't you know it, as soon as I do that and fill the bathroom with my scent, the doorbell rings. Now, the intercom to buzz people in is obviously not accessible from within the bathroom, and they wouldn't be able to hear me if I tried shouting a response to them when they knocked on the door. So in a desperate last-minute effort to maintain my privacy, I decide to just turn off the bathroom lights and sit in dark silence while they enter my home and go about their business. One smoke detector was right outside the bathroom, and that felt like a real Jojo Rabbit moment for me. Luckily, they left without suspecting anything, but it was such an eerie feeling to be hiding in my own home in such a vulnerable position. I probably could have handled it better. Story 6. Was doing security for various closed hotels on the Daytona Beach beachside. We had one hotel that had a basement boiler room in it that needed to be patrolled daily, or homeless drug addicts would break in. I usually work the weekday shifts, and this particular day, I came in after not being on site for about 4 days, asked the guy I was relieving how the weekend was, and if anyone was caught in the basement. He gives me a look that tells me no one told him about the basement. Sure enough, we entered into the small circular stairwell, and the smell alone said we had a problem. Inside was around 50 to 75 homeless druggies passed out everywhere. We bolted up the stairs, barricading the door. Then I ran to the side of the building to secure the basement door. In the end, police show up and bring 2 prison buses to escort everyone out. The basement was covered in puke, pee, and crap. Thankfully, they started a demo on that building the next day, but watching several people in a sea of passed-out drug addicts sitting up like zombies crawling out of the grave will never leave my memory. Story 7. The EDM show story reminds me of another story I had. There used to be this rave in Atlanta called Kingdom every 6 weeks. It was made out of this old, huge entertainment place with bars, roller rinks, bowling alley, inflatable obstacle course, and arcades. It was awesome for a time, but eventually went downhill, and one of the last times I went was pure chaos. The drug connections had gone bad, dealers replaced them with scumbags, and someone was giving out bad acid to everyone. It was so out of hand, I personally saw 5 people have seizures or get wheeled out by the ambulance. Halfway through the night, there were swaths of police armed with shotguns swarming the rave. All of our friends had left, but me and my friend had already taken our shrooms and had nothing to get in trouble for, so we just stayed and waited it out until we could drive home. They ended up closing it down 2 hours early and saying over the microphone, "Some butthole has been selling kids toxic acid." We spent the last 2 hours tripping out in my car before I could drive home. Story 8. The author of Story 1 sounds like an elitist prick. That wedding sounds like it had a lot of character. Being a wedding coordinator doesn't mean that you know everything about how a wedding should go. It means you know about the types of weddings that have wedding coordinators. I mean, they could have made better arrangements so everyone wasn't freezing cold. The lower quality food is fine. Everyone was fed. The camo, while a bit tacky, is their choice. They like it, they can have it. But there should have been better arrangements for warmth, like a tent with a heater, at least somewhere they can go to warm up before rejoining the party. Other than that, though, if the 2 people getting married loved it, then I wish them the best. Story 9. Last wedding I went to, it was outdoors at a park. That's not close enough to any other store. I had a huge purse with me, and I put everything that might possibly be needed inside. Scissors, a hammer, tacks, duct tape. Don't even go without the duct tape. Extra toilet paper, some extra makeup and perfume, hairpins, hairspray, extra pantyhose, aspirin allergy tablets, and a sewing kit. I got about 10 steps away from the car and ended up replacing a button on one of the rental shirts. Every single thing in my purse got used that day. I didn't really know either family, but I wonder what they thought when people kept coming up to me and getting weird stuff from my purse. Serious, what was your "thank God I looked at the contract" moment? Viewer's Edition. Story 1. I currently get few benefits from the state, but despite being promised a share, since I can't have a job, I've gotten not any of these for almost a year, and when I bring it up, I'm told they aren't for me. Even when I bring up some of them clearly are for my use only, and not just to repay gas for their travel or something. I haven't been able to use my $100 for clothes, but my mom still pockets it. And when I complain about this, I'm told about how I declined the bakery job I was offered by the state of New York and how some money is better than no money. But I specifically didn't take that job because I didn't want my career to start and end on a mockery. The bakery was a private labeler, selling to Wegmans and other stores and allowing their products to be labeled as such and not as a special needs bakery. And they used payment slips and performance-based pay. So even if I'm high-functioning, as disgusting as that is to say as an autistic person, and somehow hit the performance mark, I'd still be paid less than minimum wage. And once you get into a "we adopt the puppies" job like that, you can never shake that reputation of being cheap labor. I want to be able to pay for my house and food later in life, if I'm even allowed to have one, thank you. And the cherry on top was that 95% of upper management was made up of people without disabilities. And when I was being interviewed, and by interviewed I mean they were giving my mom the sales pitch, they had the gall to tell me that I had no right to ask for an ND majority management company because neurologically disabled individuals need rational people to teach them how to do their job properly. Like, what the actual frick did you just say to me? I've also had my accounts drained before I even got them. My grandmother's sister actually gave both me and my sister college accounts when she passed away as inheritance, but when I asked for access, since I knew I had access to them, or should have, because I got the paperwork on Christmas a month after she passed from cancer as a tween, I was told that the account no longer exists. When I obviously threw a what the frick moment, I was told that since the account was an investment-based account, I don't know exactly the type, but either way, I have since found out that it wouldn't have mattered on the two guesses I have, same results. That my mom took both me and my sister when I was 8 and she was 6 and had us sign endorsements to allow her to drain the accounts, to which she said she put the money in the Disney trip above. She said she did this because there was only a few hundred in each account, and there was no money being made. That most days we were accruing cents or losing money. However, I made a good friend out of many of my school teachers, and one of them was my high school finance teacher. So I brought up to him privately my guesses on the accounts, and basically what he told me was that the story is BS. The account type that I was told could have been two different things, but on either one, over the span that I had them and should have had them, they should have been making significant profit, not cents like my mom told me. And that also meant my sister's account would have been making profit as well. Story 2. My grandmother has friends that work with various businesses, so she often gets looped into BS. And recently, one of these friends, who has for a long time been known for being a peddler, she sold us a travel agency that messed up our first Disney vacation so bad that despite paying so much that we had to drain both my sister's and my inherited college accounts to pay the fees when I was only 8, that they didn't even give my grandmother handicap access and forgot my bed, so they had to give me a rolling mat on the floor despite it being at Riverside, for example, gave my grandmother another great deal with Spectrum, and it's killing her, almost literally. Both her and my grandfather are now retired. My grandfather finally retired mid-pandemic, well into his 70s, and my grandmother needs a literal lifeline pump into her heart to prevent an inevitable heart failure that's incurable. So this twist came to her and said that she found this amazing deal at Spectrum, where you can pay for only 10 channels and only have streaming, and it will be so much cheaper than the plan she had before. Well, guess what? She's actually paying more. She can't watch even those 10 channels because the Rokus she barely knows how to use are always buffering. And now I have to tell her every time I come over that no, I can't do anything to fix it. She has the equivalent of Internet Ultra plus TV Select plus Voice, and was paying the base despite having the account since Time Warner $120 a month. But now she's paying $180 a month for 10 channels instead of $213 and internet that can't handle having more than 2 TVs on at the same time, or her tablet on while the TV is on, and her home phone. Oh, by the way, they aren't charging her for the channels. The channels are cheap, as they should be. She's only being charged $20 for the channels. No, they just multiplied the charge for the poopy internet to make up for the channels and then some. Gone are the days of the golden era of television, where the customer came out on top. There was that brief stint of a decade or so where cable TV subsided and streaming ruled supreme for pretty cheap. Thousands of pieces of content to choose from on demand for less than what you were paying in cable or network TV packages. Then, when the success of Netflix became apparent and Hulu and the like took off, and all the other existing networks decided that they needed skin in the game, now we're back to stacking all the subscriptions from each service to create a package again that either rivals or surpasses the original cable pricing. And yet most of it is subpar entertainment anyway, because these streaming services needed to pad their platform with content or stay beholden to their shareholders. It's why Netflix is crumbling, because their primary revenue came from subscriptions, whereas something like Disney Plus has an entirely separate revenue stream and isn't just bleeding money by paying licensing fees to content that they don't own. Of course, many people choose to just pirate content nowadays because it's the path of least resistance. But all in all, it's just all bread and circuses anyway. Story 3. So with my credit under my parents' control, no card access other than a green light card, yes, the kids card, and the fact I had to steal my own social security number back because I wasn't allowed to know it being told I would be irresponsible with it. I may be autistic and a tad naive, but I'm not that big of a dip-dong, I promise. There's a big difference between being so freaking poor that you're willing to fill out 500 surveys on Swagbucks for only $1 and fill your email with spam and giving out your entire freaking identity because someone says they'll give you a free car. Emails are replaceable. Social security numbers are not. And I have a hidden cash card account on that SSN because I can't run any investments off Greenlight due to their permission. They, thank God, have never used cash before. They use PayPal for everything, but cash, never. So they didn't realize that the cash card transactions required me to put my social security number in and an old driver's permit they left with me to activate the account as a bank service, since they also hold all of my IDs. They did throw out the mailer on me, unfortunately, so I only have the digital card, not the physical card. I wouldn't trust my family with guardianship, not in a million years. My grandfather's trying to take care of her, but he doesn't understand tech much either. And for state care? Yeah, I don't think I need to get into that. CPS failed me. Mental health failed me. OPWDD failed me. Pretty much everything failed me. And I know how state guardians have treated clients before, and since my grandmother was more caring to me than my own mom in my early childhood, I'd rather not. Story 4. About 18 years ago, I got into a 4-car accident that happened at a light. I was the middle car. I was given tickets like I caused the whole thing. I challenged the tickets because I was rear-ended. I got a phone call from the court asking to discuss. They claim, after review, they would waive all fees and all points. I just need to sign. I read the contract, and it states I still take full responsibility for the accident. I point this out, and the guy handing me the contract is like, "Yeah, but you're not getting punished, and your car just has bumper damage." I said, "I don't care, and will win in court." As I left, I felt something was odd. Found out later the guy who started the whole thing was an off-duty cop. I was 22 at the time, and they thought they could slip it past me. Once my court date comes up, I go in and wait for the judge. I show I was the third car and the damage to both bumpers. Judge agrees I wasn't the cause and will dismiss the tickets. I got a call from a clerk about 4 days later. It seemed no one could find the tickets to dismiss them and asked if I had any information that could help. I gave him the name of the officer who gave me the tickets. I'm not sure why the judge took it so seriously, but yeah, he figured out that the one who issued me the tickets was a bud of the one who caused the accident, and they chose me because I was the youngest driver in the pile. Story 5. I was really in need of some work about a year ago, as there were severe employment issues in my city, and I guess kinda everywhere else too. I got hooked up with this guy that worked on small machines and large construction stuff. I was told I would be repairing things, as that was what I was getting hired for. But upon getting there, boss was like 30 minutes late, I ended up doing just manual labor the entire time. Also, the place was just a large scrapyard kind of place, with at least 20 different construction equipment and vehicles that needed to be repaired, and most of them were backlogged by upwards of 5 years. Not only that, but despite the major amount of work that would need to be done, there were only 4 people who worked there, including me. I ended up just saying that this wasn't my job and didn't even want to get paid because I felt like this was my fault for not looking into this more. Story 6. As a former notary, it is normal for just the buyers and the notary to be there for the signing. The notary brings all the items the parties need to sign to the closing. A notary's job from that point is to confirm the ID of the parties and then wait for them to go through the documents and sign where they need to sign. I have sat through closings much like these, where the party will read everything. It takes 2 or 3 hours of a time. It was good to find that mistake. It is usually a 5-minute fix, a deed to add the new party. This is a bit variant on where the closing is taking place. Worst comes to worst, the buyers are allowed to write in names on the form itself and just initial the change. So long as it is signed by a notary, those changes are taken as written. Story 7. I've read the warranty agreement for those warranties, and the person is being hyperbolic. The Act of God clause excludes coverage for things that were damaged by natural events, like lightning. Not a typical power surge like what might happen during a storm, but millions of volts of lightning going through the product, or volcanic lava, or floodwater. When most people think their house got hit by lightning, it's actually just a surge from the power coming back on. That's why typically only one or two things may blow out, because surges don't always knock things out, but they can reduce their integrity, so the next surge might. If lightning gets into your wiring and you don't have a way to mitigate it, everything on the circuit is likely going to be fried. I've always thought this was a funny, antiquated term that remained on legal documents. An act of God seems so subjective, especially when the law is involved and usually overly defined. A natural disaster or a freak accident seem like better options if trying to keep church and state separated. But I guess for insurance companies, which are privately run, then they don't have to maintain that separation of language. Story 8. A similar thing happened to me. Sorta. Applied to a church. I am religious. However, I have a different interpretation than most people in my religion. Contract or similar document was me saying, I agree that X, Y, and Z are wrong and will not promote, participate, or otherwise encourage these things, including sexuality and gender identity. They probably wouldn't have done anything if I signed and didn't follow through. However, I still couldn't do it. Felt like I'd be betraying friends if I did. Although, funnily enough, I didn't get the position. However, I did get a call back, and they seemed somewhat interested. So I guess no one even looked at it. Story 9. Judges love hearing things like this. They're always more than happy to ruin someone's day for causing trouble with the people being called in to fulfill their civil service duties. I worked through a temp agency during my jury duty summons, and they not only failed to mention to the company I was working for I would be out for a week, but also told my boss at the company I was working for I wasn't responding to calls and they hadn't heard anything from me. He was more than a little ticked off when I had the cops next to me confirm I was in fact at a courthouse. Good times. Story 10. I'm a data hoarder, an actual hoarder. I keep everything in my room. I stay in my room, and I'm extremely jumpy when people open the door or come up behind me because there's no sense of privacy or ownership. In fact, I have been told in the past that because I'm their child, I don't deserve privacy. And later, the fact I was locked up helped give them the excuse of having to be able to break in whenever I was at risk, even allowing them to excuse themselves when removing my door entirely and replacing it with a baby gate at my father's house. What was the most frisky experience you've had at work? Viewers Edition. Story 1. I was in high school, not long after getting my license, working at Chick-fil-A. I was closing one night with the manager, who I was actually kind of friends with, in the back office, counting the drawers and doing stuff on the computer. Two absolutely gorgeous girls I hung out with, one who regularly stayed at the other one's house because her own parents were gone working a lot, were waiting for me to get off work so we could get into some trouble, putting stuff up our noses or smoking something. My manager recognized them well enough, so he had no issue with them waiting inside instead of outside, where something could happen to them. It was my turn to clean the play place, and the girls, giggling, said they were going to go play there until I had to go in there and clean it. Well, I went in there after mopping the floors, and they told me to come all the way up top. I'm not sure how much detail I can go into here, but one of them had her pants and underwear off, enjoying some touching by the other girl, and told me to take my pants off as well, and both of them traded off, going down on me. Then we paired up and did the same to each of them before one of them climbed on me and rode me to oblivion. I certainly made sure to clean and sanitize very well before I walked out. They seemed to enjoy playing in that ball pit. As a bonus to add on, at the same store, I got to do some pretty nasty things to one of the hottest girls in my school in the stockroom. At Chick-fil-A? Wow, I thought they had moral standards of some sort. Isn't that why they're closed on Sundays? Maybe I should check out Chick-fil-A more often. Story 2. They're pretty hypocritical. To be completely fair, the owner and his family claim to be Christian, but they've always tried to represent the company as simply being respectful of their employees' and community's religious rights and observations, and family values. That is, being closed on Sunday isn't directly labeled for Christians, but so that employees who do have religious observations have one day to do so, and for the rest, it's a guaranteed day off to spend with family or whatever else is important to the employees. but you'll definitely see them supporting certain Christian organizations, and I may be wrong, but I'm pretty sure they have a lot of money tied up the big police funds in Georgia, which more recently have been getting more publicity due to the whole Cop City training facility near Atlanta that got a ton of pushback from the community, and where like 40-some-odd protesters were just arbitrarily charged as domestic terrorists a few weeks ago. Pretty crazy stuff. Pretty draconian and authoritarian. So not a good look on the part of a fast food company who claims to represent positive values, but in this day and age, I think for them they probably see it as being on the right side of the issue. Story 3. Another one came to mind. I used to work in entertainment for a very large entertainment company in a warm climate state. One show had a control booth that was also accessible to the cast members, but remote enough that it took a couple minutes to get to from backstage. A single person ran the show from the booth and could hear when others were halfway from the backstage to the booth, so plenty of time to react to visitors. There were all kinds of rumors of the person running the show hooking up with cast and other crew members up there, partially because many times at shift change, there were 2 or more people in the booth. I believe the rumors because I was one of the people who had hookups in the booths, and I'm sure participants from my and other hookups helped fuel the rumors. I worked at a campus theater in college as a trailer editor for the cinema group, and we had access to the projector room. Similar rumors about this, where people would hook up during screenings or late at night before the building was locked up. Really, what would you expect? A bunch of frisky college kids with access to a private, dark, and cozy space with an added flair of scandal. There was no way that wasn't going to become a hot spot for those that could access it. Story 4. I used to deliver office supplies for a small company. While I was out delivering supplies, I got a call from my boss asking me to come back and get one of our sales ladies. Apparently, her car had broken down, and my boss was genuinely nice, so he offered to drive her home after her shift. I hadn't finished my deliveries for the day, so I was going to finish them after dropping her off. Boss didn't realize that the sales lady and I had dated before I helped her get the job. She had me drop off my deliveries on the way to her house, and then blew me in her driveway before heading back to the shop. I got back to the shop just in time to go home, called up the sales lady, and went back to finish what we started after work. Best day at work ever. Just to keep this as family-friendly as possible, I should clarify that when OP said the sales lady blew him, he probably meant that she blew him a kiss. How sweet. Story 5. I actually have one. This was about a few months back when I came in for my early morning shift. The overnight crew was doing their tasks when one of the produce workers decided to take a cucumber, drop her pants, and use it on herself, while another worker recorded her doing it. The video got posted online and a major investigation was done, so that way this didn't become a PR nightmare. Manager pulled the entire overnight crew and described it in explicit detail. The girl was crying by the time the meeting ended and didn't see the recorder or the girl again after that meeting. Again, some PG clarification. She used the cucumber on herself like how you see people slice them up and put them on their eyes during spa treatments. A definite no-no at work. Also, while OP claims he never saw the recorder or the girl again, he surely did, except it wasn't in person. It was when he stumbled upon their Cucumber Hub account online. Story 6. I used to work at an Italian restaurant, and I worked in the salad station. I was the salad chef. My very Italian boss was very personal and would get close and would always talk with his hands and just move them a lot. And one day he was talking to me about making sure I have enough salad stuff prepped for the busy day we had ahead of us. As he's talking and moving his hands, I kid you not, one of his fingers accidentally went inside my nose. The worst part is that he didn't even acknowledge it or apologize or anything. He just kept talking. He was a great boss, though. As the old saying goes, you can pick your friends, you can pick your nose, but you can't pick your friends' noses. Story 7. I may or may not have some erotic literature that I've written under a pen name that my boss found on my work computer. He read it all, of course, and called me to his desk to, what I thought was to explain, but in reality was to demonstrate to him some of the more kinky aspects of the stories. I'm so glad my husband didn't mind. Of course, my boss is my husband, or was at the time, so the owner of the business was fine with it. Oh, my husband was also the owner, and the office was in our garage. Story 8. The funny thing is that story 13 happened to me. I was in a meeting with a newspaper reporter, and I had to show her the new logo for the company. The IT manager told me the logo was under folder X. I double-clicked it for a full-screen corn video to pop. I got so blushed and was embarrassed. All I could say was, "It's not my computer." And the reporter said, "It's okay, kid. This is normal for IT." She was in her early 30s and not impressed at all. Story 9. Used to work at my local Walmart, walked into the office, overhearing two of the female managers talking, one saying to the other, "You're going to get so much booty," as I approached. The door was open, though if I recall correctly, I did knock out of curiosity. Still, it made for an awkward moment. For what it's worth, both managers were very attractive. One was in her 20s at the time, and the other in her 30s. Please leave your stories in the comments. I'd love to make a video of them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.